Right. Right. Well, I assume that everything is a lie until proven otherwise.
Yeah,
That's, my sort of a nuclear strike on culture is bullshit until it smells not like bullshit, And I got a
right,
pretty keen nose by now. So, I mean, most thoughts are put forward for specific advantage, right? For people who, right? So, why do you have to have a college degree? Who's telling you that? Well, I mean, obviously this comes out from colleges a lot. And of course it comes out from government funding, right?
right,
Why do government want people to go into colleges? Because colleges, particularly in the arts, are a great way of neutering anybody who might question the system. Right? So you want to try and rope in the smartest people around because they may actually end up questioning the system or provoking questioning of the system and so on. So you want to rope those people in as much as humanly possible. And the best way to do that is to bribe them into compliance. And the way that you do that is offering fantastic benefits to academics. And that draws everyone in to be a conformist, or if they fail, they're stuck with so much debt that they can't think about bucking the system and so on. Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of, yeah, and of course, everyone who's got those degrees, a lot of people who end up as managers came through the degree system. And so they don't want to say, well, I guess you don't need a degree if you're really talented. But of course, if you look at the IT field, right, how many of the top people in IT have PhDs in computer science? Well, I would say almost none. None that I can think of. I'm sure there's a few. But yeah, so so just you look for specific advantage, and you can find why are people motivated to pursue a particular topic, right? So it's always a question: why is someone saying this? Why is someone invested in this? Why are they even interested in this topic or fact at all? And you can usually find the answer fairly quickly. But I just assume that everyone is trying to manipulate me for profit, until I sort of hear otherwise. And the hearing otherwise can be very quick, but that's just generally my fortress of skepticism, if that makes sense. But go ahead.
fair enough. I mean, I track along with what you're saying. I guess it was more of a almost a, how can I say this? Isn't it a shame that at least for me that I have to go through the agony of or the pain of confusion and failure in order to go, wait a minute, and step back and say, let's do this again, because I've just spent so many decades unhypnotizing myself from just a bunch of nonsense, and I'm thinking, what else is left here, because you know what I mean? I mean, of course, there's map territory distortions and things like that, and you get down into transformational grammar, and you can get so deep, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what's this got to do with getting what I want and having a successful life? So I don't want to track too far down there, but in the end, it's about just being better at what I do, and being more successful in life, and being happy and giving something back. So what I'm thinking about, so I'm pretty goal oriented, and then I'll step back and I'll even question why I want the goals that I want and things like that. For example, I've done wasted a lot of time chasing estrogen-based parasites and things like that. So um, it affects all areas of my life and, of course, everybody else's. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could just have some breakthrough, and you could just all the pieces of the puzzle just like lock into place that you need to know, right?
Well, I think it's just about having respect for the knowledge that you've acquired. Right? I mean, let's say that you become an expert. You spend 20 years studying Byzantine art, right? Now, you would not expect people you meet to be experts in Byzantine art, right?
Right.
Right. So that to me is pretty foundational. So I spent 30 years studying philosophy. So when I meet people, I simply assume, and that's just, just respect for the knowledge that I've acquired. I wasn't born brain damaged and then, or with some sort of horrible physical defect or deformity or incapacity, and I have spent 30 years trying to muscle and lever and physiotherapy myself back into a state of normality, right?
Right.
I have become, deeply learned and wise in philosophy. Certainly not perfect, but very, very learned in philosophy. And
Sure.
the vast majority of people have not spent 30 years and 40,000 hours studying philosophy.
Sure.
They think they have, right? The one difference, of course, is that if you study Byzantine art, then most people, if stuck next to you at a dinner table, will say, I know nothing about Byzantine art, right? And so at least their lack of knowledge will be clear to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's different with philosophy, because philosophy is one of these disciplines, it's sort of like economics, where every asshat with a rodeo lasso thinks that they are really, really, really great at it, right? They do. They really think they know what truth and virtue and reality is or isn't, and so on, because they've watched Inception or something. They think they have some grand knowledge or vision. And if you have respect for the knowledge and wisdom that you have accumulated through your study of truth and reason and virtue and evidence and all that, then you have become an expert. Now, a physicist is known as an expert. If I have a huge degree or some massive accomplishment in physics, then everyone says, dude, that guy's a physicist. He's really good at physics, That doesn't mean that you defer. As Richard Feynman said, science is basically skepticism in all authorities, including scientists.
Yeah.
But there is a category called physicist, which people recognize and defer to, right? There's no category called philosopher that people recognize and defer to, right? When was the last time when some moral question came up in society and all the news directors were like, damn it, Jim, let's get a philosopher on the set. Nobody else will do, right? If you have some big question about physics, then you get your physicist on the set, right? If you get some big question about art, you get your art expert on the set. But people are so bad at philosophy, they don't even know that they're bad at philosophy, right? They haven't accumulated the humility of the rational consequences of applied ignorance, right? They spend all this time playing Candy Crush and watching Seinfeld reruns, which makes them better at Candy Crush and Seinfeld than I am, but they have not spent that time studying philosophy. And one of the reasons they haven't spent time studying philosophy is they already think they're an expert. I don't take walking lessons or how to go bald lessons, right? I've already got that down. Thank you very much. And so people already think that they're experts, so why would they study something that they're already an expert in? And it is very humbling and humiliating for people who are actually good at something to assert their expertise. People find that upsetting and scary, and you're saying to people, well, this essential discipline that you think you know something about, you don't know anything about. And this was Socrates' pursuit of the sophists in 2,500 years ago, and it's my pursuit of the villains of false confidence in the here and now. People who think they're really good at something which is essential, and they say is essential, and everybody knows that virtue and philosophy is essential, when their ignorance is revealed, they get very hostile, because philosophy is one of the few disciplines where people make fundamental and major life decisions and inflict coercion and support violence and so on based upon their understanding of what is moral and good. The welfare state is moral, right? National defense is good. Without the government, we'd be, right? Taxes are the price we pay to live in a civilized society. I must hit my children, right? So children should be put in government schools. Government schools must be paid for by property taxes. We must tax the rich. We should, right, help whatever minorities, right? These are huge decisions that people make without having a clue what is goodness, what is truth, what is virtue. And when you point that out, not a huge number of people make massive decisions based upon a personal interpretation of physics, right? Those who do, right, fire is my friend, tend not to be around for too long. I can fly, right? And those people are obviously insane. But people make massive decisions based upon their perceived understanding of philosophy, particularly moral philosophy, about which they know less than nothing, right? Knowing nothing is fine. Now, I know nothing about Byzantine art. Nothing wrong with that. But I know that I know nothing about Byzantine art. I don't pretend otherwise, and I don't vote and run a museum dedicated to Byzantine art and all that because I know that I don't. So really having respect for I'll be quiet in a sec, but having respect for your own expertise and recognizing that most people are literally criminally incompetent at philosophy. In other words, their incompetence leads to criminal actions, right, on the part of the state, on the part of foreign policy, right? Human beings are criminally incompetent at philosophy and don't know it, and believe that their criminal incompetence is stellar and deeply wise and knowledgeable virtue. And recognizing that and having respect for the information that you have gathered in your course of studying wisdom is really, really important. But that's sort of my best advice for staying sane in a crazy world.
That was brilliant. So I guess the question is that I asked myself then is like, where am I assuming that I'm good at and I'm not, but I don't know it? See, that's the next level. So, and that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to discern, you know?
Right.
I mean, the obvious stuff, like I'm not good at physics and things like that, but there's what I mean is hidden assumptions. I mean, most of the things that the concepts I'm referring to are just daily life things, you know, going to Safeway, going to 7-Eleven. You know, how should I talk to the girl? Should I go out with this person? Should I apply for this job? I mean, should I, what, you know,
Well, hang on.
It's a street
Okay.
level.
I think you might be putting different sized things in the same bag, right? So going to Safeway, how do you talk to someone at Safeway versus should I apply for this job, right? Those are very different categories.
Sure. I guess I'm maladroitly illustrating just street level stuff. I mean, what I mean to say is there's been so many obvious aha moments in my life that if I had known before, it would have saved me a lot of pain, you know, just in day-to-day living and obvious things.
Right. Well, okay, so my question is, when you have a major life decision to make, then what do you do? How do you approach it? Let's say you're thinking of applying for a job in a different field or something like that, right?
Right, yeah. Well, first I wonder why I want it, and then I'll sit down and say, what do I know about it? And then I'll check my premises about what do I think it really is, and what will I really be doing, you know? Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we all have a certain degree of that level of skill to be able to do that. But what I'm wondering is, I've always had, this is a little bit more personal. I've always had a feeling, well, since I was in about 5th grade, that everybody knew something that was really important about life that they didn't tell me.
Right. Yeah, that's a defense mechanism, which makes you say, well, the driving seems crazy, but I'm sure there's a method to his madness because I'm strapped and tied up in the trunk of the car. So I'm sure there's right. Feeling that there's somehow a method to society's madness is simply a way that we don't wake up screaming every 5 minutes when living in a society that's currently running the world, right? I mean, just that there must be some method in this madness is a defense mechanism when you're in an obviously insane society. And you'll often try and pick at tea leaves for evidence of sanity and so on. But so, yeah, people, you know, it can't be this crazy. There must be something they know that I don't, right? And that's not right. That's not it's not the case. I mean, people are retarded about society and about virtue and aggressively so, right? There's no idiot like an aggressive idiot because it's one thing to be an idiot and say, I don't know. It's another thing to vigorously assert that you know something you don't. That is where that is kindling for the world's fire. So, yeah, there is that sense, of course, that people know more than they're letting on. But I don't think I'm going to go to my grave never knowing that secret because I don't think there is any of that.
Right. Yeah.
So what about asking people, right?
Asking people?
Yeah, I mean, do you have people in your life? Yeah, did I hear you correctly? Asking
No, I apologize. I wasn't.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
But do you have people in your life that you can run through your decisions with, right?
You know, I did. I had. I don't know if you probably read my response, the survey that I sent back. But I had one best friend for a long time, one, and he was very bright, and he passed away recently, and it's been really weird since then. So
Right.
I guess that's also compelling me to ask somebody else. But no, I don't have any peers that are at all right now that are a foil for me right now.
Do you have any way of finding anybody new?
I'm working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's key. Yeah, that's key because we all have blind spots, but the good news we don't all have the same blind spots,
Right.
right? So, I was just yesterday asking Mike, we spent an hour chatting about my proposed action in the face of a particular situation. And I think he talked me out of my initial reaction. We ended up with something that I think was a good compromise. I would not have come to that on my own, right? Because we have these grooves in our head, right? And not the delight kind of groovers in the hall stuff. Like we have these grooves in our head, which we tend to fall into, right? The well-trod paths of circular reasoning or non-reasoning, as the case may be. And we need other people to jump our tracks, to jump us out of our train tracks. And I find that if I merely ruminate myself about my course of action, I will invariably make mistakes because I can't see what I can't see. Now, other people, it's blindingly obvious what I can't see, but I can't. Right? It's my blind spot, and I can help other people with their blind spots and so on, right? So I think that stuff is pretty important. So I would say really try and work to keep people in your life or find people in your life. I mean, if you've been studying philosophy and you've been studying self-knowledge, then you have a lot to offer, like-minded people or minded people, as I like to say. So I would really focus on that. And then if you have studied the principle, like if you've got a life decision coming up, if you've studied your principles and what you're doing is in accordance with your principles, if you have checked your skepticism, right? Because other people want to disarm us of skepticism in the same way that bank robbers want to disable security systems, right? In order to exploit us, other people want to rob us of our skepticism and whirl us up in crowd, Borg, unthinking hysteria, right? It's the 4th of July, cheer, right?
Oh, jeez.
And, you're on this sports team, cheer, so people will always want to disarm us of our skepticism. It's the first ninja move of nimble thinking at exploitation. And so if you check your skepticism, you check your principles, and you talk it over with people that you trust and get their feedback, that's the best you can do. It doesn't mean you won't make any mistakes, but at some point you have to act, right? And we don't want skepticism to become paralysis, because that's another way in which bad people win, right? They either overrun your skepticism or provoke your skepticism to the point where you become a statue of infinitely, excruciatingly slow contemplation and inaction. So, you check your principles, you check your skepticism, you check with those who care about you for blind spots, and then you act and you monitor the results.
Right. That's what I was looking for. I mean, that's a really good heuristic. I was wondering how you were going to put that. So, brilliant.
And look, I mean, this show is a resource for that, right? If you are between friends, right? Then if you have a big major decision calling in, give us a shout, and we're happy to help. I mean, it's instructive for you. It's instructive for other people. It's certainly what I really enjoy in these conversations. So feel free to give it a shot.
Yes, and I have to say I've been waiting to, but your show is so incredibly valuable. I really sit down and think about what you guys are doing, and I'm just so pleased that what you guys are doing, and I turn everybody on to it that I know, even if they hate me, which is actually kind of amusing, because it does happen once in a while. And I go, okay, well, that's good, So I'm constantly pimping out Free Domain Radio, as they say. I really, really appreciate what you guys do. I really do. It's I think the most powerful. I discovered Free Domain Radio by Googling the phrase "countries don't exist," because my girlfriend and I were sitting down and we were meditating on abstractions, and we were really, because she's a skeptic as well, and we were really digging deep. And it's like, if you were to step back as an alien and look at that kind of thing. And so there it was, and I was like, wow. But it's like one of the most difficult. I'm sure besides denormalizing abuse, just getting people to see that countries are just made up. They work
Right.
to a certain extent,
Right.
but it's like there are no lines, on the map.
Right.
And it's like it could have been anything. It could have been Oz. It could have been Narnia. It could have been Middle Earth. It doesn't matter. But and you should. I mean, I've got some cohorts and peers that are not stupid, and they look at me like I'm from Mars. It's so shocking to them. So
Well, Mars, that's an insult to Mars. Right. I mean, no, look, I hear what you're saying. Like, I remember working on a Dungeons and Dragons map of a world, a fantasy world that I was creating. And I was looking for like names, right? So like the guy who wrote Conan came up with Iranistan or something like that. And then killed himself because he was upset that his mother died. Anyway, I guess sometimes hyper-muscled guys can be a reaction formation to a bit of an overgrown mama's boy. But I was working on this, and I had a map open of a geographical map, right? And I was sort of looking at the map that I was creating of a fictional world and looking at the map of the real world, and I'm like, you know what? Actually, I think these are both just fantasy maps. I think this is both just a made-up universe of imaginary lines. There's no particular reality to one versus the other in terms of their existence in the world. Anyway, so listen, is there anything else you wanted to touch on right now?
No, not
Because we
at
do
all.
have some other calls.
I just really enjoyed talking to you, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, and give us a shout if there's anything we can do to help. And thank you so much for your enthusiasm for the show and for sharing it. I appreciate that. And I just as far as people disliking what you do, I just read this study today, and I'm going to talk about. I'm doing a couple of Peter Schiff shows later this week, and I read this study today that for those who don't know, Milgram's experiment, where he was trying to. This is shortly after Adolf Eichmann, one of the Nazi leaders, went to trial in the early 60s. Stanley Milgram, a psychologist, set up a series of experiments where he had white-coated lab guys telling people off the street that they were going to get involved in a learning experiment and they were going to apply electrical shocks to people to help them learn. And the electrical shocks went up to like fatal dosages that were clearly marked could be fatal. And the majority of people ended up just dialing it up. Now, this experiment was redone recently, but they studied people for 8 months beforehand to get a sense of their personality types, and they found that the people who registered as the nicest and the most agreeable people were the ones who dialed up the fatal electrical shocks the most. Agreeableness is a virus. It is a pathological virus. Disagreeableness, those people who were marked high on what are generally called antisocial disorders, who were disagreeable, who were cantankerous, who were oppositional, those people had a goddamn conscience. And at much lower rates were willing to kill citizens on the order of somebody supposedly in power who simply had a bleached coat. Ooh, the bleached coat of moral forgiveness. I can do anything that coat says. It's magic. And, Joseph had a coat of many colors. Evildoers have a coat of one color, which, pretend evildoers in this situation. And so agreeableness is promoted in society because agreeableness promotes the agendas of evil rulers. Have friends, be agreeable, be liked. This is just Politico speak for conform and obey. People who are agreeable scientifically tend to enact the orders. They tend to enact the orders of those in power. And those who are disagreeable tend not to. So whenever you see someone who's highly popular and who is very agreeable and nobody dislikes, this person is a Nazi just waiting for the right person to give them orders in general. And those people who are disagreeable, who psychologists will say, well, this person has antisocial. What it means is that they will actually save the lives of people rather than kill them because somebody wants them to. So agreeableness is a pathology to be profoundly adapted to an insane society is not a mark of sanity. It's simply a mark of convenience to the rulers, which is why antisocial is considered negative and pro-social is considered positive, because it makes people very easy to rule. So yeah, be disagreeable, be disliked. That is the future and the lives that you will save. Well, thank you.
Oh, that's bitter. That's brilliant, mate.